Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of D.E.I. Deathwatch, where we track the doubling down and the deterioration, downfall, deterioration, whatever, some word that starts with D of D.E.I. I'm your host, Scribelight, stumbling over myself on a Monday afternoon. And ahead of time, thank you, Keeverdam, for pointing out the error, the spelling error on my thumbnail, which I have now corrected. But, you know, I put it together when I was still waking up and doing other things, so I take no blame. It was a small mistake. Anyway, hope everybody's doing well on this beautiful Monday afternoon. Let's see, let me get all my streamer stuff going on here. I got to get my Chiron going. Got to get my comments on. And speaking of comments, who's joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon? Noah Sencio, good afternoon. Mike R, hello. Morgan King, good afternoon. Blue-Eyed Scream, hello. Jay Blizza, hello. Walter Tomaszewski, hello. My cat's learned a new joke. If the leader of Russia is called a czar and his wife a czarina, what are his children called? Zardines. There you go. Joke of the day. And Walter says, thank you for putting up with me, Scribe. Well, don't put it that way. I'm not putting up with you like I have to tolerate you or something. Thank you, Walter. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for your generosity. Also, thank you, Keeverdam. Guys at the top of the chat box, there's a link to a GoFundMe for a longtime follower, Terracin/Evelyn. She and her boyfriend, their house burnt down. They just need, in relative terms, a small amount of money to get themselves shakily back on their feet. They're looking for $5,000 as of right now. They have $677 raised. I am almost entirely sure the last donation came from a Duck Dog on the last stream, where he very generously donated $50 if I would turn off my camera and return to my avatar, which I did. I'll be a whore for $50 to a good cause. But if you happen to have a couple of extra bucks and can spare it, please think about donating it there. But even if you can't, if you can share that out on social media, that would be appreciated. So thank you ahead of time for that, and thank you, Keeverdam, for providing the link. TF Oryx! Haven't said that name in a long time. How's it going? Hope you're doing well. Somnamnul Nation, good afternoon. Kiro Soldier, hello. Anybody else? Attack Alpaca, hello. And Draco Rincewind, hello. Mike Savage, blarg. Unfair Ophelia, hello. Angelverse, good afternoon. Simon Willikins, hello. Call me impatient, but YouTube took a little while longer than I would have liked to send this notification. YouTube has been known to malfunction. Take what you can get, I suppose. Spyro Girl, good afternoon. And Resolute Germ, hello. All right. So it's been in the rest of the world news, it's been a very busy last few days. A lot of misery, a lot of terrible things. Not going to touch on them. It's for another time, another place, and plenty of people already talking about things. So we're going to talk about D.E.I. because it's still going, if you can believe it. So let's start out with something that, I mean, it seems like every episode now it has to be D.E.I. is being rolled back. Fill in blank with demographic that is most affected. So first it was black women, then it was white men, and now it's journalists of color. It's not a coincidence. Journalists of color being laid off amid Trump's anti-DEI push. Okay, maybe it isn't a coincidence. Or maybe, and I still need to get a good overlay of this quote, but let's once again remind ourselves of the Thomas Sowell quote that seems to become more and more relevant as we go through stories like these. When people get used to preferential treatment, equal treatment seems like discrimination. Is that the case here? Let's find out. Trey Sherman was traveling to work on the New York subway when he received an email from David Ryder, a CBS News executive, about an imminent meeting on October 29th. Sherman, an associate producer of CBS Evening News Plus at the time, CBS Evening News Plus, suspected that he would be laid off. Okay. CBS News' parent company, Paramount, had closed a merger with the Hollywood studio Skydance in August and planned to slash more than 2,000 jobs as part of corporate restructuring, as is usually the case after a merger. Okay. Sherman, who is black, and Ryder, who is white, relevance? Not sure yet. Had an amicable conversation, according to Sherman. Okay. Ryder told Sherman that he was being laid off because his show was being eliminated, Sherman said, and that Ryder was unable to assign the team to other positions. Sherman accepted the news, and the two men wished each other good luck. Okay. But when Sherman left the conference room and entered the newsroom, he said he learned that his white colleagues had been told a very different story. A white coworker told Sherman that she found it, quote-unquote, messed up that the people of color on the team had been laid off. Of the 9 producers who staffed CBS and Evening News Plus, 5 white people were reassigned to other positions, while the 4 people of color on the team were let go, according to Sherman and another former staffer who spoke on the condition of anonymity out of fear of retaliation. So, according to Sherman and someone who we don't know, this is what happened, okay? Later that day, Sherman documented his experience in a viral TikTok video. CBS did not respond to The Guardian's multiple requests for comment. So is that true? Okay. Oh no. Alan Thyler, thank you so much for the loving, huggy Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wowie. Wow. Wow.
Ooh, there's a Your Boy Pat Dogcat Fox. Very breathy Dogcat Fox. Thank you so much, Alan. Appreciate it. Hope you're having a good day. Sherman's role may be the latest casualty in a nationwide crackdown on diversity. Several high-ranking black officials have been fired from the Trump administration, such as, and thousands of jobs related to diversity, equity, and inclusion have been cut in the private and public sectors. Yes. Are those jobs exclusively assigned to non-white people? I mean, mostly. Were they assigned to them because they were non-white? Probably. The Guardian talked to 7 recently laid-off journalists at CBS, NBC, and Teen Vogue who spoke of people of color on their teams being let go while their white colleagues were spared, or the chipping away at coverage focused on marginalized communities. Newsrooms, again, were they let go? Is there an intersection here of circumstance where it's like, well, we hired a bunch of people specifically because of what they looked like and not because of the quality of their work. And so when it came time to start cutting and budgetary things, we let go the people we could lose. And unfortunately, do you see where I'm going with this? Maybe? Newsrooms have long been less diverse than the U.S. population. Okay. And how would you solve for that problem? Which makes these layoffs in particular especially pronounced. Well, again, yes, if you stack the deck with people in your newsroom or in your workforce on the basis of what they look like first and foremost, and then suddenly you have to reevaluate who's actually got the merits to stick around, and the people you hired not on the basis of their merit, but on the basis of their aesthetic. Yeah, can you see why this is a trap that was self-laid? In 1978, the American Society of Newspaper Editors, an organization for media leaders, vowed that the racial makeup of newsrooms would reflect the U.S. population by 2000. Well, you know, in 1978, I'm pretty sure that I was supposed to have my moon base by now. We don't always get what we think we're going to get. As the deadline neared in 1990, the deadline? No, what? The deadline. Okay, as the deadline neared in 1998, the Society moved the date to 2025, but newsrooms still haven't met that goal. Well, how would you achieve that goal without racial quotas? Right? I mean, you have to have, 65% white people, 13% black people, 20% Asian people, and on and on. I mean, what? And do you know why we don't do those, or why we shouldn't be doing those anymore? Oh yeah, illegality. Okay, but newsrooms still haven't met that goal. According to a 2022 Pew Research Center survey of nearly 12,000 journalists, 76% of respondents were white, 8% were Latino Hispanic, 6% were black, and 3% were Asian. Okay, the survey showed an overrepresentation of white journalists. Overrepresentation. It's not about representation. An overrepresentation. Okay, well, all right. How would you solve for this problem? If there's too many white people, how would you solve for it? Since nearly 58% of the population was white, about 19% were Hispanic, and 12% were black, and 6% were Asians. Well, I mean, if your metric is the population demographics of the United States, then I guess there was too many white people. So, what do you suggest be done? Some journalists see the layoffs as capitulation to the Trump administration's war on DEI. Or, and just hear me out, if you hire somebody not on the basis of their merit and keep them around only to pad your demographic fit and aesthetic, sensibilities, and then suddenly you have to be forced to think about, well, now we've had this major company merger and we have to cut who's actually productive and actually knows what they're doing versus those that don't. Those that have the qualifications versus those that never did. And now we have to assess these things meritoriously. Oops, looks like the Thomas Sowell quote comes true. Is it possible? Is it possible that these companies, these media organizations, have ultimately built a rod for their own back by pushing DEI for so long that suddenly, when the rug's pulled out from under them, they have to correct. And that correction looks like racism. Is it possible? After Trump's January executive orders calling for an end to DEI programs and the termination of affirmative action in the federal government, yeah, also because the Supreme Court called it unconstitutional. But anyway, Sherman said that one by one we saw companies get rid of their DEI initiatives. Yes, because they have been, at least in the tempting phase, illegal the entire time. They've been violating civil rights laws the entire time. And they finally got called out on it. And what happens? CBS and NBC are subjected to regulatory scrutiny by the Federal Communications Commission, which oversees radio, television, cable, satellite, and wire communications. Okay, and what administration has been running the FCC for the previous 5 years, or 4 years, right? And who was really making the FCC enforce the civil rights laws until Trump came in the second time? During his first week in office, Brendan Carr, who I'm not a fan of, the FCC chair, announced that the FCC would end its DEI efforts by, among other things, removing it as a priority from the agency's budget, and quashing its advisory group and task force. Good. And several weeks later, Carr launched an investigation into Comcast and NBC Universal's diversity initiatives, as he should, followed by a similar inquiry into Disney and ABC. Disney told employees in a February memo that it would stop Reimagine Tomorrow, a platform that amplified underrepresented voices. You mean a platform that propped up people on the basis of what they looked like or their orientation rather than what they could actually do? Yeah. And the corporation's 2025 annual report eschewed the word diversity for the first time in 6 years. Yeah, because, thankfully, someone is minding the store. A little bit. In July filings to the FCC before the merger, Skydance promised that it would eliminate Paramount's DEI initiatives and workforce diversity targets. You mean workforce quotas. Workforce racial and gender quotas. Quotas that are illegal. Need I remind? I guess I do, just for the sake of reference. Need I remind of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964? You know, which variously states that employers are not allowed to hire on the basis of sex or national origin or religion or color or race. And so we had all these companies, Disney, ABC, American Airlines, Accenture, HP, on and on and on, in no uncertain terms publicizing the fact that they were hiring people to make a demographic balance. First and foremost on gender and race. That's illegal. It's been illegal the whole time. Somebody's finally enforcing the law, and then that suddenly seems like discrimination. And in October, Barry Weiss, an opinion journalist who advocated to end DEI for good, well, I can't say I'm in disagreement with her on that, was appointed the editor-in-chief of CBS News. Some CBS News employees have been on edge since Weiss's appointment. Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. I'm not so sure it's about her stance on DEI so much as her religious/heritage origins. But who knows? Then in early November, sources allege that most Teen Vogue employees, many of whom were women of color, were let go as publisher Condé Nast announced that the outlet focused on politics, fashion, and news would join Vogue's website. A Condé Nast spokesperson said it was inaccurate that most of the staff had been let go. Those reductions came several weeks after NBC News laid off 150 employees and gutted teams on verticals that exclusively covered Black, Asian American, Latino, and LGBTQ plus communities. Well, let me ask you a question, Guardian. Was any of those outlets making money? Let's set aside the implication that all of this was because of race, and let's consider the possibility that these outlets were created simply as a virtue signal that made no money. And so when push came to shove, and it was like, do we cut the things that make money or do we keep the things that don't? Are you even going to entertain the possibility that there was something far more pragmatic and less sinister going on here? Some institutions within the journalism industry have also steered away from DEI in their company language since Trump entered office. The Civil Rights Act did not start with Trump. The threat of enforcing those laws more stringently did reignite with his election, but these guys knew what the rules were and they've been breaking them all along. In April, Gannett removed demographic data and mentions about diversity from its website, citing Trump's executive order calling for an end to DEI. It's all Trump's fault, guys. We wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for Trump. And you know what that tells me? That tells me you're in the wrong job, or you don't appreciate the law, or you don't actually appreciate what the civil rights movement of the 60s actually was supposed to do. It's like, you know, if it wasn't for Trump, we'd totally be breaking the law again. The Trump administration, quote, has used its power to exert more control over the media than maybe we've ever seen, Sherman said. No, the Trump administration is threatening to enforce decades-old laws. Quote, it so happens that part of their agenda is to, let's be real, not just get rid of DEI initiatives, but to get rid of diversity in and of itself. Oh my gosh. This guy was a journalist, was he? Sounds very impartial. Sounds very objective. Sounds like somebody who can't think outside of his own self-interest. Why would such a person be let go from a news organization? In a political climate that's hostile to diversity, hostile to illegal discrimination. This is, I love it. Hostile to diversity. Hostile to law-breaking illegal discrimination. In a political climate that's hostile to diversity, people of color must start their own media outlets and podcasts. By all means, go ahead. said political commentator and National Association of Black Journalists board member Roland Martin. Yeah, so board member of a inherently racist organization. The board member of an inherently racist organization wants to criticize the rest of us about discrimination. Okay. Quote, these companies are going to learn a hard lesson. If you continue to remove Black, Latino, Muslim, and Asian American voices, because Muslim is a race, as we know, those consumers are going to go elsewhere. Okay. And more power to them. I mean, if they start a black entertainment network, or a black entertainment television network or something, hey, where, you can just talk about whatever you want. Go ahead. And if there is enough of a market share that does damage to the major media companies as a result of this, then so be it. And then maybe they'll actually, make programming and such for those demographics that they want to attract. But if they do so on the basis of hiring people simply because of their ethnicity or their race or something, kind of a problem. After speaking to his white colleagues, Sherman went to Ryder's office to confront him about the layoff discrepancies. Are we sure that Sherman's original hiring wasn't a discrepancy? Sherman said that Ryder told him that he chose to keep people he had previously worked with. After Sherman posted his video recapping the conversation with Ryder on TikTok, did Ryder make this statement publicly, or is this just what we're hearing through Sherman? He said he received messages from former employees at other media outlets who had similar stories. Mary, a woman of color, who is using a pseudonym out of fear of jeopardizing future job prospects, said that she was shocked when she watched Sherman's video. Well, I'm sure you would be if you had one source for this information. Again, this individual is a journalist, correct? He's reporting a story with one source, himself, of information, and corroboration from anonymous sources elsewise. I mean, it does sound like modern journalism. She was laid off from another CBS team on the same day as Sherman, and soon realized that out of the dozens of people on her diverse team, the only 4 who were laid off were people of color. Okay. Quote, we certainly have white producers, we have white reporters who could have been laid off as well, Mary said. They had to have, quote, known that it would not look good, unquote. Known that would not look good if they had laid off their white employees, but it looks great if they lay off their non-white employees. What? In a memo to employees, the new Paramount Skydance CEO, David Ellison, wrote that the cuts were necessary for the company's longevity. Quote, in some areas we are addressing redundancies that have emerged across the organization, he wrote. In others, we are phasing out roles that are no longer aligned with our evolving priorities, as in things that aren't making us any money, and the new structure designed to strengthen our focus on growth, unquote. Mary and Sherman, though, say it's clear that CBS's methodology for who they chose to lay off reflects the Trump administration's assault on diversity. It's all Trump's fault. There are no other possible considerations as to why this was done. And our only sources for this information are people who feel spurned by the companies they are now no longer a part of. Quote, I'm not accusing any one person of looking at my department and deciding to lay off all the people of color, Sherman said. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You just said that your former boss was the one who made this decision. And the decision was, you say, to lay off only people of color. So, you're a journalist again, right? I'm not saying that, but I am saying that it's not a coincidence that the layoffs that they chose to do fell along racial lines. You know what? I'll stipulate to that. I will stipulate to that. But can you imagine another possibility? DEI goes away. Suddenly, a whole bunch of people that could easily be suspected of having been hired because of DEI are the first to go. Golly gee whiz, what is... there's got to be some kind of connection. It can't be a coincidence. While Sherman would not comment on whether he was pursuing legal action, hey, If he really thinks that he has a case for workplace discrimination and firing, go for it. By all means. We need to have more of those cases put up against the courts and set precedent. Go ahead. Because here's the thing. If the reverse of such a lawsuit shows that CBS was hiring people specifically because of their race for years and years and years, good. I want that kind of thing to come out. So I hope he does pursue a lawsuit. It might not have the result he wants, but it might expose and leave no room for doubt as to what's been going on at these companies, and maybe we'll have some change. Mary said that she and several CBS employees have expressed interest in filing a lawsuit. Quote, "This is very suspicious," unquote. It's not that suspicious. If you think about it outside of your own personal interest for a second, it's not that suspicious. But in mid-October, the entire teams behind NBC BLK, NBC Asian American, NBC Latino, and NBC Out were laid off. But content from around the newsroom will continue to populate the verticals. Okay, whatever that means. Okay, so basically you had all these extra branches of the news unit that were specifically created to satisfy some virtue signaling, racial diversity quota type stuff, and they didn't make any money. Nobody watched it. The advertisers didn't care. And out they go. But elements of the kind of things that they covered will be integrated into the basic newsroom. Like, okay. I don't know what to tell you. Curtis Bunn, the only reporter at NBC BLK, So, an entire adjunct division of NBC had one reporter. The only reporter at NBC BLK, a vertical that focuses on black communities, I'm shocked, because leaving the vowels out of black means black, was one of the people who was let go. Over the past 2 years, he said he watched the team dwindle from 4 people to 2 until the final purge. It might give you a clue that what you're doing doesn't have an audience and doesn't have any advertisers willing to pay for it. The layoffs also come as most of Comcast's NBC Universal Cable Network spin off into a new company called Versant Media Group, causing NBC News to streamline its operations. Yes, the media landscape is changing with all these mergers and acquisitions and such. Over the past 2 years, he said. So wait a second. Over the past 2 years. So you mean before Trump was reelected, your NBC BLK team was winnowed down just to you? So it wasn't Trump that started that trend, you say? So do you mean to tell me there was something going on when it came to diversity programs and such before Trump came into office? Bunn said that he trusts the company's reasoning, but he is curious about why the teams that covered marginalized communities were eliminated. Well, you're a journalist. Quote, "When you see what's happening around you and you see the nature of even the media companies capitulating to the administration..." Now the lights around you are flickering. If I suddenly disappear, that's going to be fun. Mr. Bunn, over the past 2 years, he said, as in you said the past 2 years, you watched the team dwindle from 4 to 2 until 1. So before Trump took office, the company was shrinking your department. So And you see the nature of even the media companies capitulating to the administration, Bunn said. You can't help but feel like that has some part or some role in what took place. He said that he was told that he could apply for other roles at the company. Okay. Quote, the journalists behind NBC BLK, NBC Latino, NBC Asian America, and NBC Out have chronicled our communities with depth, nuance, and humanity. NABJ president and co-founder of the 19th. Okay, 19th what? Aaron Haynes said in a statement. I'm sure they did. Nobody cared. Apparently, it wasn't making any money. I don't know if you guys realize this is not a charity. At the end of the day, these are businesses. We might want to put our media companies on some kind of pedestal as truth finders and justice seekers in some way, shape, or form, or holding a power to account. And, you know, there are probably people out there that really think that's what they're doing, and maybe they do, and I hope they do. But at the end of the day, these are businesses, and if you're not making any money, there's only so much charity they can extend before eventually the scissors come out. And they were coming out before Trump took office. Even you admit that. I don't know. I think they're just capitulating to the administration. That's what I think. I think there's no other consideration. It's just Donald Trump controls the media now. Tracy Lee, a journalist who was with NBC Asian America's digital additional... let me try this again. Tracy Lee, a journalist who was NBC Asian America's digital editorial manager from 2015 to 2019, okay, said that the vertical helped elevate Asian American and Pacific Islanders' experiences to a national sphere. I'm sure they did. Was it a money-making adjunct to NBC? I know, I'm being real stringent here. Quote, so often we have other people telling our stories for us, whether it is being glossed over in history books or perhaps just being excluded from the narrative, Lee said. Quote, this was a space where we could, on a national level, tell our own stories, unquote. I gotta say, and admittedly, my attendance in watching broadcast network television these days is pretty slim. I had never heard of NBC Asian America. I had never heard of NBC Out. I think I had heard of NBC BLK previously, but only because someone else made the joke of there are no vowels, etc. So, okay. When NBC Asian America wrote stories about the concentration camps that held Japanese Americans during the Second World War, readers reached out to say that they had never been taught about the topic in school. How many readers? That is not some... I was taught about that in school. That wasn't some kind of secret. Were they homeschooled or something? Leaders from affinity groups, including the Asian American Journalists Association, sounds relatively racially exclusionary, NABJ and NLGJA, the Association of LGBTQ plus Journalists, that was orientationalism, met with NBC's executives about the layoffs in late October, during which NBC promised to continue covering their communities. Okay. It was soon after this that 5 women of color from Teen Vogue were let go. Condé Nast, Teen Vogue's parent company, would not confirm the number of laid-off staff or their demographics. Okay, we're almost done. Skylie Alvarez, if I'm saying that correctly, an Asian queer woman on Teen Vogue's editorial team. Skylie Alvarez, an Asian queer woman on Teen Vogue's editorial team, okay, who was laid off, said that she was in a state of shock when she realized that most of the laid-off employees were people of color. Can you think outside of your own universe for 3 seconds to imagine why that might be? Quote, in the media landscape today, a lot of people of color, a lot of people of marginalized identities tend to be in these entry-level, associate-level positions, Alvarez said. Quote, and so to me, I was like, this speaks to a bigger issue beyond all of us. Yes, it's called stacking the deck with people who look a certain way rather than what they can do, and suddenly, when that infrastructure falls away or is yanked out from under you, you've got nowhere to go but down. The Condé Nast spokesperson said that the restructure is designed to help the company grow since Teen Vogue has long faced difficulties in reaching audiences, i.e., not profitable. Quote, rather than continuing to operate independently, bringing Teen Vogue under the Vogue umbrella allows it to tap into a larger audience, stronger distribution, and more resources, the spokesperson said. Corporate speak for, it's not making enough money, we'll take what's at least ostensibly valuable and just merge it into the existing company that is making money. There you go. I mean, if Condé Nast really wanted to do something money-making, they could actually make a good shadow movie or a shadow TV series or something. They still have the rights for the moment until it goes public domain in like 4 or 5 years or something. Any organizational changes the company makes are purely driven by business strategy to grow consumer engagement with our titles. In other words, Teen Vogue was a money loser. Quote, Teen Vogue was one of the last really outspoken publications on problems that affect young people, that young people care about, Alvarez said. Well, apparently they don't care enough. Uh-oh. What happened? Am I still here? Why did that happen? Okay, the page I was looking at just died. I didn't close that. Am I still here? Am I still live? You guys still see me? Let me know in the chat. I don't know what that just was. I don't know if my browser just crashed or something. Give me a high sign in the chat, guys. Let me know. Still here? Okay. Just making sure. Sorry, that was a little bit of paranoia on my part. The tab crashed. And I thought maybe my stream had died. Okay, we're almost done with this article. Let's see. She hopes that communities of color and LGBTQ plus people will continue ensuring that their perspectives are heard nationwide despite the publication's absorption. Yeah, because, you know, without Teen Vogue, I would never hear anything about the LGBTQ plus community. I mean, it was the one single source for any information on that litany of demographics, as we know. In light of the mass layoffs, some black creatives have begun gathering online to form a collective in their vision. Okay? In early November, Anaya Freeman, a digital marketer based in New York, put a call out on LinkedIn, also a great site, to start a media company with recently laid off black journalists. Oh, so, hey, CBS and other media companies that are being totally racist in who you're hiring and who you're retaining, let's start our own company with only one race allowed. So far, she said, about 200 people have joined a group chat. A core group of 15 recently laid off black media professionals from various companies, including ABC, Rolling Stone, and Condé Nast, have met on Zoom several times. For now, their media company is called Black Media Caucus. Do you see the problem here? Do you see the self-defeatist problem here? Those guys are being totally racist and firing us. We're going to be just as racist back at them. Quote, it's going to be giving us perspectives that they're trying to take away from us, Freeman said. Quote, we need black-owned and run establishments that are going to stay that way. This current political climate is an inspiration for all of us. Hey, Miss Freeman, let me ask you something. Let's say the owner of CBS came out and said about CBS's, news coverage and broadcasting, it's going to be giving us perspectives that they're trying to take away from us. And by they, the owner of CBS means black people. We need white-owned and run establishments that are going to stay that way. What would you say about such a person? What words might you use to describe that person or their operation? There you go. There you go. That's the solution, guys. That's the solution. Spoonie the Rebel. Oi, nerds. Oi. You know, the first time I ever heard oi in that way, or oi, this is a long-forgotten spokesperson. Jacko for Energizer batteries. Does anybody else remember Jacko? I bet you don't. Oh man, this is from the dark corners and recesses of my memory. Remember Jacko? Oi! Yeah. Morgan King is going to last the some. It is going to last the same time as the failed black-only city. Oh yeah, was that Black Hammer or whatever? Those Looney Tunes in Colorado that thought they could just buy land and then also have the water rights or something. Yeah, how did that go? Let's see. A lot of women love Black Caucus, or so I'm told. Ahoy! What about ahoy? That sounds similar. Lots of things sound similar. Anyway, so there you go. DEI declines black journalists most affected. Solution: start completely race-segregated media companies. I guess. But anyway. Let's move on to more benevolent racism. As the Housing and Urban Development, or the Department of Housing and Urban Development, launches civil rights investigation into Boston's DEI housing policies over alleged racial discrimination. HUD Secretary Scott Turner opens federal investigation into Boston's DEI practices for alleged Fair Housing Act violations. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, not to be confused with the, what's his name? Paul. Why did I suddenly forget his name? Anyway, that movie, HUD, announced Thursday an investigation into the city of Boston, Massachusetts, alleging its diversity, equity, and inclusion housing practices violate federal anti-discrimination laws. HUD said it has evidence that Boston used federal grant assistance for, quote, race-based preferences, unquote, in violation of the Fair Housing Act and Title VI, describing the initiatives as a social engineering project. Quote, we believe the city of Boston has engaged in a social engineering project that intentionally advances discriminatory housing policies driven by an ideological commitment to DEI rather than merit or need. HUD Secretary Scott Turner said in a statement, quote, HUD is committed to protecting every American's civil rights and will thoroughly investigate the city's stated goal of, quote, integrating racial equity into every layer of city government, unquote. Turner added that this, quote, warped mentality will be fully exposed and Boston will come into full compliance with federal anti-discrimination law. I hope so. My question is, what consequences will befall those that have been pushing this and enacting this whole time? The investigation came after HUD sent a letter to the Mayor's Office of Housing, alerting city officials that it had, quote, reason to believe Boston was improperly using its federal grant assistance. According to HUD, Boston's Fair Housing Assessment promises to, quote, target homebuyer outreach, unquote, at, quote, Black and Latinx families, unquote, and charges city departments with collecting racial and ethnic data to, quote, evaluate their work through a racial/equity social justice lens, unquote, which I can completely believe. The policy is clear, the agency stated. Financial housing assistance is not just for all low-income persons, but instead, quote, particularly BIPOC residents, unquote. Turner said Thursday on X that HUD is breaking up Biden's Boston BIPOC bash. Quote, Boston pushed discriminatory housing policies in the name of DEI, he wrote. This warped mentality will be exposed and Boston will come into full compliance with federal law. When reached for comment, a city spokesperson told Fox News Digital that, quote, Boston will never abandon our commitment to fair and affordable housing, and we will defend our progress to keep Bostonians in their homes against these unhinged attacks from Washington, unquote. Turner slammed the Biden administration earlier this week, telling Fox News Digital he blamed the former president's policies for an illegal immigration and refugee crisis that rattled the housing market. HUD releases its, quote, worst case housing needs report, unquote, every 2 years, which assesses the state of the housing market for low-income Americans and how many lack both affordable and adequate housing. Turner said there are damning findings in this year's assessment, which he pinned on former President Joe Biden's immigration crisis. Quote, the unchecked illegal immigration and open borders policies allowed by the Biden administration continue to put significant strain on housing, pricing out American families, unquote, Turner said. This is all good. And as I put onto X the other day, I would also recommend, hold on a second. Let me find this. Let's see. Let me find this real quick. Make sure this is still. Oh, did they delete it? Did they change it? Oh my gosh! So there's a similar program, kind of, that I found out about sideways in Washington State. It's called the Covenant Home Ownership Program, and let's see. Let me find a better article about this. Man, I had one before. I didn't bring the link with me. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Let's try this one. So, in Washington State, there is a program called the Covenant Home Ownership Program. And what this program does, for all intents and purposes, is give home loans specifically to people on the basis of their race. And most of these loans are forgivable in the sense that you'll never be asked to pay them back. It's basically free money given to people because of your skin color to buy a house. A state program addressing the historic harms of racially restrictive real estate covenants has helped hundreds of Washington residents become homeowners since last summer. And this article was written back in February of this year. Why it matters. For decades, many deeds contained language barring the homes from being sold to Black, Asian, Native, and Hispanic Washingtonians, fueling segregation and disparities in homeownership rates that persist to this day. And so how does this program address that? Let's see. 70% of borrowers on those loans are Black, 15% are Native American, 9% are Hispanic or Latino, 1% are Asian, and 4% are other races or not listed. So let's see. 70 plus 15 is 85, plus 9 is 94, plus 1 is 95, and then 4 are other races. So 99% of these loans are given to people on the basis of their race. The fine print, buyers can qualify for these home loans if they are Black, Latino, Indigenous, Pacific Islander, Korean, or Asian Indian, or if they have a parent, grandparent, or great-grandparent who was. Those groups still have a much lower home ownership rate than white Washingtonians. So, taxpayer money is being given to people on the basis of their race, first and foremost, or an identifiable ancestor. But if you're white, you have no access to such benefit. So, I hope HUD takes a look at that one as well. But I'm more curious to know, what's the consequence? If you are the politician in charge of running a demonstrably illegal and racist program in your state, in your city, what happens to you? What are the consequences? The program ends, and that's what I want to know. But, yeah, 30 push-ups. That's probably about it. Yeah, a slap on the wrist and a victimhood story. Like, the Trump administration came down on me unfairly because I was trying to help marginalized people. How dare he, that racist? I can kind of see it already, what the reaction would be. Let's see. I've got one more here. Well, I've got two more, but I'm already going a little bit, well, let's see how long it takes me to get through this article. Then we'll see if we'll do the second one. White House attacks college essays about race in latest DEI crackdown. Personal statements highlighting race have become another issue in the DEI crackdown within college admissions. Yeah, okay. So for those of you who may not be veterans or may not remember, I've done at least a few stories in the past on diversity statements in college admissions, where students were encouraged or even required to give a statement of their diversity experience in some way, shape, or form. And here's kind of why that works, sort of. In many colleges and in many institutions, it is either verboten or questionable to start querying incoming people about their race or their ethnicity. However, if you give someone a open forum to volunteer that information of their own accord, well, you can't blame the institution for what the person applying wants to say about themselves. And if someone looking at their application reads their essay about their personal struggle because of diversity, well, you can't blame them for absorbing that information because it's part of the student's makeup and part of their history. Now, if this somehow sways the admissions officer simply on the basis of looking at what they say their race or ethnicity is, well, I mean, that could happen, but it's not. We didn't ask them to tell us what that information is. It's one more loophole. It's one more thing to tell the admissions office, hey, by the way, if you didn't know, I'm not white, or I'm this, or I'm that, and I'm a victim of XYZ BDQ, so take pity on me, and also you'll be filling out your quotas. Essentially what it was used for. But let's see. The White House has issued another update in its crackdown on DEI and higher education. The Trump administration is looking beyond college departments as it tries to turn away from diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Now the federal government is looking at college essays used during admissions as potentially unlawful, as reported by the Boston Globe. While many students have used personal essays to describe their academic journeys thus far, the government now deems their writings, including race, aligned with now banned DEI practices. Many colleges require these personal statements not only to show a student's writing ability, but also highlight a moment where they overcame adversity, proving how they exemplify and contribute to the school's values. True, but will the schools also admit that they used it as a pass-through to also identify students on the basis of their race? To fill out any kind of affirmative action criteria, maybe? As some diverse applicants describe their personal obstacles as students of color, the proposed dog whistle can now seem part of a discriminatory admissions process. Since the reversal of affirmative action, schools cannot consider identity factors such as race, ethnicity, or national origin. Yes, that's true. Because of what? Title VI. But anyway, quote, a lot of students might read a community prompt and think, oh, I'm in the band, I'm the editor of the paper, and I'm going to write about an activity, said Jason Weingarten, a senior admissions consultant, before adding how some, quote, read between the lines of what admissions officers were asking, and they're going to talk about their race, culture, ethnicity, heritage, socioeconomic status, anything like that, unquote. They didn't need to read between the lines. It was right there. If you can make a case for yourself being a particular demographic, you had a better chance of getting into college. Because of what? Oh yeah, affirmative action. It wasn't some kind of mystery. However, given how students' livelihoods within and beyond academia become shaped by those experiences, many have wondered what will come of the admissions processes as they foster schools' communities. Well, maybe, and I know this is a crazy idea, maybe focus on their academics. Maybe focus on their scholarship. Yeah, socioeconomic? Sure, fine. You know, if they are able to maintain an A average while also being poor, hey, good on them. What does their race have to do with it? I know, it's a crazy idea. It is a crazy idea to evaluate someone on their merits. Many will wonder what will come of the admissions processes as they foster schools' communities. With this, the mentioning of these identity markers in college essays has sparked legal issues. The White House now views these expressions of students' voices as another way to circumvent the removal of affirmative action. Well, could it be? Could it be doing an end run around? In a post-affirmative action world, the number of black and brown students across many elite universities has seen a decline. I know. Shall we read the Thomas Sowell quote again? When people get used to preferential treatment, equal treatment seems like discrimination. Yes, when colleges and universities are no longer allowed to use your race as a value factor in the admissions process, suddenly people who have benefited from having their race marked as a value factor in the admissions process don't number as shocking. An analysis by the Associated Press also confirmed that 20 selective colleges witnessed a significant drop in black freshman enrollment since the 2023 ruling. Oh, the 2023 ruling. Oh, you mean 2 years before Trump took office again. However, some elite schools remain committed to subtly identifying students from diverse backgrounds through these personal statements, even though their future may be in jeopardy. Some schools remain committed to subtly identifying students from diverse backgrounds. Some schools still remain committed to violating federal law. Weingarten finds the continued use of these prompts as a way to still provide pathways for diversity. Quote, "It's a quiet signal, but it's an unmistakable act of resistance against constitutional law. And isn't that great? The civil rights movement of the 60s, be damned. We're going to push right through it as an act of resistance." Are you listening to yourself? Well, you probably like hearing the sound of your own voice. I might be guilty of that as well. There's no filter. They know exactly what they're doing. They're proud of it. Oh, yeah, you know, civil rights law, fairness, academic rigor versus demographic fit. We know what we're doing. And it's a purely justified act of resistance. Yeah. Racist for good reasons. That's what it is. Let's see. I'm glad I failed and realized that it's better to change your role than lower the bar. Yeah, what are these colleges offering anymore that's of value? We talked about this, I think, in the last DEI Deathwatch. Jill Powers, who used to work at a college, brought it up. And like, you know, are people actually getting value for money when it comes to college education these days? Or would you be better off going to a trade school, you know, or a technical college or something? They did all this gender balancing in schools, creating these Potemkin villages of like, oh, look, we have just as many men as we do women. And their gender balancing programs were decidedly disadvantaging women. but that was good because of the marketing. Insane. Absolutely insane. Us Micks never get a break. I mean, you've got Guinness, right? And green beer? What do you people do? I don't know anything about you. I mean, I'm if I have any connection to the Isles, as it were, it's mostly Scottish rather than Irish. I think, aren't we like sworn enemies or something way back in the day? I don't know. Gallic versus Gaelic. Something like that. Fix your fucking memory leak, YouTube. What happened? Also, hello, meh. All right, well, I got one more story. No, I don't want to invite guests. I want to share a screen. That's what I wanted to do. Speaking of higher education, Inside Higher Ed asks the question, is DEI dead or just changing? It's not dead. It's not changing. The only thing it might change, ironically enough, with the artwork they've chosen for this article, is its spots. But that's about it. After a year of repeated blows. Okay, so we're setting aside everything from late 2022 through 2025. Okay, diversity professionals and scholars are debating whether DEI has a future on college campuses, and if so, what its next iteration looks like. I'm hoping indictments of some kind, or the absolute removal of federal funding. Miguel Luna, a senior at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, has seen his campus roiled by changes this year after state lawmakers passed a law in 2024 banning diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives just before the second Trump administration began ramping up attacks on DEI. Okay, so before Trump took office, in 2024. Okay. University leaders replaced the campus's DEI office with an Office of Access and Engagement last summer. Again, changing spots is going to be the running theme here, I'm pretty sure. The Student Multicultural and Diversity Programs Office became the Office of Student Engagement and Enrichment. The university's Social Justice Advocacy Council, part of the former Multicultural and Diversity Programs Office, where Luna previously worked, was demoted to a student group. His job at the office was to help fund student programs related to social justice issues. Quote, some would say divisive concepts, he said. And student groups' cultural events, but the university won't pay for that work anymore. You want to know why? Title VI. I'm betting you, dollars to donuts, it's Title VI. Programs and activities that receive federal financial assistance. I'm just making a wild guess here. Meanwhile, a student club he and his peers founded to support Latino students called Esperanza lost access to funding it used to receive from the university for Hispanic Heritage Month and other events. Running the group while fundraising to continue it has been isolating, Luna said. I know. It's crazy. It's crazy that long-standing civil rights laws are being enforced, or at least actions are being taken in fear of that enforcement. I know. Quote, it used to be a very inclusive office, welcoming of a lot of people, he said of his former workplace. Quote, it used to be a space for anyone feeling alone. Sorry, are you talking about the Latino group that was ethnically segregated as being anyone? When you say anyone, do you really mean anyone? It used to be a space where anyone feeling alone or anyone feeling like they weren't seen could go to be recognized and fit into a group or an organization where they could speak their mind peacefully, there was really a big loss of community. There was a really big loss of community. What if a similar whites-only organization was run on campus? What would you say about that? I know, it's a crazy question. To fight such changes, he and another student working at the Social Justice Advocacy Council joined professors in a lawsuit against Alabama Governor Kay Ivey and the university system over the anti-DEI law in January. Well, you know what? I bet that the anti-DEI law was completely unnecessary because we have the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I've said it for all this time now. Do not pass new laws that target DEI. Just say we are going to require institutions to be in full compliance with established civil rights laws. That's all you need to do. Does a exclusively Hispanic club on campus meet Title VI? No? Then it's out. That's it. But this summer, a federal judge declined to block the legislation. Luna said he and the other plaintiffs are in discussions about continuing the legal fight, but in the meantime, he's doing what he can to support students through Esperanza. Despite the funding challenges, quote, "We're very determined to continue," he said, quote, "no matter what the circumstances or conditions are," unquote. Hey, if you can fundraise independently for your ethnically segregated social group, go ahead. Do you see what? Do you know and understand why the college suddenly, even though they shouldn't have been the entire time, why they are not giving you money from college coffers, from federally assisted coffers? Do you understand why that is? If you don't, across the country, students like Luna have seen their colleges slash positions, services, and programs they celebrated and relied on amid a deluge of federal and state challenges to anything perceived as DEI, or anything perceived as violating civil rights laws. President Donald Trump won re-election in part by amassing support from voters frustrated with wokeness. True enough. Who argued they were being sidelined in favor of minority communities' concerns. True enough. Critics bristled at concepts like white privilege, male privilege, and implicit bias. True enough. The idea of reverse discrimination gained a foothold. There's no such thing as reverse discrimination. There's just discrimination. People who use the term unironically reverse discrimination have no idea what they're talking about, or are trying to diminish the idea that people can be discriminated against even if they're in the majority of the population. The idea of reverse discrimination gained a foothold, and campuses, companies, and other institutions that had introduced sweeping affirmative action reforms after the 2020 killing of George Floyd, you mean drug overdose and heart attack, suddenly faced a backlash. Yeah. Do you have any notion that maybe their affirmative action reforms were in violation of established federal civil rights laws? Under repeated threats to their funding, yes, higher ed institutions began to rebrand or shut down cultural centers, Black student resource centers, and LGBTQ+ and women's programs, unquote. Okay, why? Why is their funding under threat? Let's take a step back for a second. Each one of these stories so far has to do with the removal of funding from the college to these organizations. Why is the college doing that? What is their motivation? And why does Trump or the federal government writ large have the ability to threaten their funding? Did they just conjure this out of the ether? Or has there been a long-standing set of laws that have held this Damocles sword of the purse strings over public institutions that accept federal money since the 60s? And only now is that threat actually being brought to fruition. many campus diversity officers lost their jobs. What were they producing? Or were shuffled off to other offices, barred from doing much of the work they were hired for. Is it really work, though? Some institutions scrapped celebrated traditions such as affinity graduations. Yes, racially segregated graduations. I did a video on this. I believe it was Boise State. They had their black graduation. I will refrain from bringing up Title VI again, but Title VI. And campus residential communities geared towards students of certain racial or ethnic backgrounds. Celebrated traditions like racial segregation. Are you even listening to yourself? A celebrated tradition of racial segregation. You know, I can think of a period in American history where that same argument was made by a particular demographic of Americans when it came down to integration and civil rights laws. How popular do you think those Americans are today were they to be as vocal and as proud of their celebrated traditions as this article suggests? Campus residential communities geared towards students of certain racial or ethnic backgrounds. Some student groups, like Esperanza, lost university funding because of their identity-based missions, because of their racial segregation. Identity-based missions. They lost funding because Title VI. It prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin in programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance. You have an organization called Esperanza that caters specifically to Latino students and none other. If federal financial assistance in the fungible sense through college funding comes their way, they would be in violation, the college would be, of Title VI and risk losing all of their federal funding. Are you at all, is this article going to mention Title VI just once? You know what? I'm gonna do a quick word search. Title. No. Not once. Not once doesn't mention Title VI in this entire article. Or like how about 6? How about VI? No, I get middle of words. 31 instances in the middle of words. Not once. Gosh, why? Why would they do this? One recent example, the University of Alabama ended 2 student publications, one focused on women and the other on black students, citing federal policy concerns. Federal policy concerns? The University of Tennessee at Chattanooga shuttered its Women's and Gender Equity Center, an LGBTQ center, its Office of Multicultural Affairs, and the Office of Student and Family Engagement, replacing them with a Center for Student Leadership, Engagement, and Community. The changes have affected faculty and staff as well as students. I'm sure they were all benefiting off of legally questionable organizations. Earlier this fall, the University of Illinois system banned consideration of race, sex, or country of origin not only in financial aid decisions, but in hiring, tenure, and promotion as well. Oh my gosh! Guys, you can't consider race or gender or ethnicity in hiring and promotion? What possibly could be the reason? I can't. But they've been doing it for how long? How long have they been having these policies in place where they have hired, promoted, and granted tenure on the basis of race, gender, etc.? Will anyone be punished for this? The answer is no. Short of something amazing happening, this admission that they have been engaging in these activities for some unknown period of time will go unpunished. So, the University of Illinois system has been violating civil rights laws and the civil rights of its employees or potential employees for years. I love it when organizations like universities or media companies put out public statements saying that they will cease using XYZ PDQ illegal assessment in their hiring practices or something. What's the reverse of that? Well, how many people's civil rights have you violated up to this point then? Quote, "It's very sad to see a lot of universities fall to their knees," Luna said. I would suggest that student Luna take an actually well-taught civil rights course. And then, particularly with a focus on Title VI, align his personal pet project with what the law has said since 1964 and ask himself, could that be the reason? Higher ed institutions, quote, "are supposed to be the places where the exchange of ideas happen, where leaders are developed, and where you're just taught about how the world objectively is. It's a very dangerous sign for the future," unquote. You're promoting a ethnically and racially segregated organization that you want taxpayer money to fund. Boy, oh boy, this goes on for quite a while, and my voice is already giving out, if you couldn't already tell. So I'm going to stop there with this article, and I think I'm going to wrap things up. The link to all the articles are in the description below, including an article I chose not to go with, I think. No, I didn't put that in there, did I? There was another article about some legislation someone had proposed to try to bolster DEI, but it's just proposed legislation, and there's been a lot of legislation that's been proposed before just to get a rise out of people, and I decided not to take the bait this time. I know, crazy idea. But yeah, so there you go. Our latest in the wonderful world of DEI. Is it dying or is it just changing? It's not dead. And it'll keep changing its spots so long as loopholes are allowed. You know, well, we understand this is an act of resistance, having diversity statements from students. You know, we can't ask them directly, what race are you? So we'll just give them the opportunity to volunteer that information themselves. We're not doing anything with that information. We're just asking them about their stories of adversity in their lives that may include their race or ethnicity or orientation or something else that we can use to pad out our numbers to make ourselves feel good at the risk of denying students who actually have the merit to get into this college the opportunity to get into this college because we have to feel good about ourselves. But like I say, if you don't keep the eyes on what they're doing, they will just find a different way to do it. And that's it. And the only way to hold them accountable is under not only existing law, but to make sure that if there are loopholes, that you close them up. You know, this is really the time where the legal experts who know something about civil rights law, I'm sure, are keeping an eye on where people are trying to find end runs around not only the established rules, but the imparted restrictions from the Trump administration. Because a lot of what Trump did can be easily reversed by the next administration if it's Democratic. You know, his executive orders could go out the window day one. So really it's about shoring up existing laws and really enforcing and punishing violators of existing laws. No mercy. If you're a college, you've been put on notice. If over 2025 you have not gotten the message that racially discriminatory programs or activities will result in you having your federal funding taken. If 2026 hits and there are colleges that are still trying to eke these things in or still trying to practice this stuff, you yank their funding. No questions, no hesitations, no discussions. Yank their funding. And you say, okay, guys, well, come back and see us in 2 years. You can reapply for your federal funding then. And when you do reapply, we're going to do a full audit of all of your programs and activities on campus to make sure that before we give you that taxpayer money again, you're actually in compliance with federal law. And if you're not, too bad. So have fun in independent fundraising for 2 years for your college that has been violating federal law for who knows how long. And when it comes to private businesses, we've already seen through the Ames case that there were blocks in place to restrict complaints from certain employees on the basis of their race. That if you happen to be a part of the majority population, the standards you had to hit in order to get an actual case on discrimination were far higher than anybody else, which is unfair. So we already know that there are hidden obstacles to holding employers accountable for violating federal law. We need to fix those. And when we see things like the University of Illinois was hiring and promoting on the basis of race and gender, maybe we should look into that. Maybe a company shouldn't be able to dodge accountability for those kind of things if 180 days pass or whatever the time limit is on some of these things, especially when it's in mass quantities. You know, if a company's singular policy violates the civil rights of 3,000 potential employees that didn't get a job over the course of 5 years, shouldn't that have some kind of meaningful consequence to it? I think so, but we'll see. Anyway. Mike Savage, don't think we have the same level of protections in Ireland. Government loves screwing us over to be the best boys in Europe. Yeah, the UK writ large is in serious trouble on many, many fronts right now. I have some of these things we're seeing coming out of, I know they're not the totality, but some of these things are horror stories. Guy posts a meme, gets 6 months in prison or something. And let's not even talk about the immigration problem. Kay Roberts is apparently Corbin Dallas, even though Corbin Dallas is another viewer of mine. So I think you guys have to fight for the quickening or something now. Speaking of which, it was funny going back to a university graduation last Saturday, and they added an alumni pin ceremony they didn't practice before the election. The university is having to care about alumni again. Yeah. They got to hedge their bets. They're like, well, you know, if the funding gets pulled, who we go to? The big wallets. Assassin Gray, Scribe Light. Scribe is a madman, thinking the law applies to our morals. I know. What can I say? I'm an idealist. Is that my nature or is that my demeanor? Only White Wolf knows for sure. And Blood Scream, enforcing the laws to be a start. Yeah, well, that's what's needed to have been happening this entire time. The laws are there. The ability to disincentivize and punish people for violating these laws, it's right there. It's been there the whole time. It's been a lack of enforcement. The EEOC has been understaffed and underfunded for years. The colleges have not been held to account for blatant violations of Title VI over decades now. And they hid under the umbrella of affirmative action. Even when it came to their hiring practices, which as an employer is a separate law all by itself, but because of affirmative action, they said, oh, well, I guess we can get away with this too. But now that affirmative action is gone, there is no mystic chords of justification left for either educational institutions or private institutions to believe that somehow, well, if we're doing it for the right reasons, then it's okay to be discriminatory and racist and sexist. No. It's got to stop. But the only way that it stops is with enforcement and consequence. It's so far, it's just been not quite getting there. We got 3 years left under an administration that seems to take this subject seriously. I want to see a corporate poster child of consequence. If we don't see that, if a message is not sent that this kind of behavior will be punished, then it'll keep going. They will keep finding exceptions, loopholes, sneaky little ways. We read it in that article where the guy's talking about this is a quiet act of resistance. No. Anyway, I could go on, but that's the show. Programming note, Thursday. I already have the next TED Excellence picked out. I mentioned this on the Discord server. By the way, if you'd like to join the Discord server, I can give you a link here in a second. But strangely enough, last week's subject was the intersection of indigenous knowledge and space travel. Seemed like a pretty unique kind of thing. It was a TEDx talk that was apparently given November of 2024 before the election in America, in Australia. I believe it was Canberra, I think. Well, just the other day, a new talk has been posted about the intersection of native peoples and space travel, and it comes out of Australia, but I think it was New South Wales or Sydney or something, a completely different place, a completely different speaker on the same subject. And I thought to myself, what are the odds? So, Ancient Astronomics 2 will be the subject of the next TED Excellence coming out Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on this channel. And speaking of the Discord server, if you'd like to join the Discord server, a link to the Discord server is in the chat right now. Click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you're not a bot, have actually watched the stream, and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is leopard. Like a leopard changing its spots, as it were. Just say, hello, leopard, and I'll know that you watched this show. Otherwise, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or at the top of the chat box, the GoFundMe to help out Evelyn or Terracin with some funds after her house burned down. Please take a look at that if you have the opportunity. If you can donate, please do so. But even if you can't, please share that out on social media with a little blurb about the story there. It would be appreciated, so thank you ahead of time for that. And with that, everyone, I hope you have a good rest of your Monday, a good rest of the week ahead of you. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.